Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the MTG Goldfish Podcast, episode 105, your weekly Magic the Gathering related podcast covering everything having to do with the game. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, mtggoldfish.com, and now on YouTube. So, hello, everyone on YouTube. Joining me, as always, is Richard, the owner of MTG Goldfish. What's up, Richard?
Hey, Chaz. What's going on?
It's going well. Quite the weekend. We are going to dive in really quickly on this. Seth, our resident jank brewer and all-around MTG content creator. What's going on, Seth? Probably better known as Saffron Olive.
Oh, what's up, guys? Ready to talk some Aether Revolt. We finally have new cards in Standard. I'm super excited to finally get to talk about it.
Yep, fresh off of vacation and ready to talk Aether Revolt. Chaz, again, always is joining you. I produce everything, at Magic the Gathering related content, but focusing on the financial aspect. So, SCG Columbus is in the books. Aether Revolt is now fully in Standard. The bans are in place, and we got to see how people are kind of attacking a post-ban metagame. So the top 64 lists are published on the website, so you can see them there. And some interesting stuff. I'd love to hear your guys' take on this because as I'm watching it, I'm just kind of like hearing you guys talk in the back of my head, and I'm like laughing as I'm watching the SCG stream, and it's just great. I can't wait to talk about it. So why don't we just jump right in to SCG Columbus, and then after we'll discuss just a couple little things about Modern and then Fishmail. So what did you think about the post-banning Aether Revolt Standard, Richard?
Looks good so far. So I watched mostly Saturday. Sunday, there was a conflict with football, so I chose football. But on Saturday, we saw a lot of different decks. Emrakul was gone. Smuggler's Copter is gone. So we saw Delirium decks, green-black Delirium decks. We saw green-black +1/+1 counter-focused decks, tokens, green-white, Colossus decks, and of course, Saheeli was everywhere. What's interesting to me is Walking Ballista. If you look at the cards that were banned, cards that are good, 2-mana colorless cards that can be played, like Copter, Hangerback Walker, and now we have Walking Ballista, which showed up in a big way. So that's pretty interesting, and I'm putting an asterisk beside that one. Colorless cards that can end up in any deck that can be cast at any point on the curve seem a little suspicious. But other than that, the bannings look good. I think if we did not get the bannings, we would not see this diversity. So sucks for people's wallets, but good for watching and good going into the Pro Tour.
Well said. Seth, did you get to, I'm sure you were watching with bated breath on your vacation. So what did you think?
I was pretty happy with it as well. I mean, it was much more diverse, and I was impressed that a lot of the decks that got targeted by the bannings were still around. Surprisingly to me, probably the biggest loser was the blue-white decks, and those were the ones that had what I thought was the least impactful of the bannings. Of course, it's maybe more that if you're playing those color combinations, you want to be playing the copycat combo, so that might be more of what happened rather than the old-school blue-white mid-range flash decks being just bad. But we saw green-black decks perform really well. They kind of skewed aggro, which is kind of what we expected. We had seen builds like that before. We still have some vehicles lists that mostly, with a few upgrades, tossed in Heart of Kirin in the Smuggler's Copter slot, but are still playable. So I was pretty happy that it seemed like the bannings hurt the big decks enough that you would consider other options, but they didn't hurt those decks so much that they're just unplayable. So if you had Mardu vehicles, you had green-black Delirium, you still have something you can kind of throw some new cards in and keep playing. So even though it sucks to lose value on your Emrakuls, on your Smuggler's Copters, your deck as a whole is still pretty functional if you can adapt a little bit.
Can we cue that Saheeli clip that we had in the episode 100?
Jazz, Saheeli's still not good, Jazz. It's
But I totally predicted that they would print a Splinter Twin combo.
File not found.
File not for. I think at least we can agree that the deck is a thing. Like it I think going into it, a lot of people kind of were like, oh, it's easily disruptible. Oh, like if you're just trying to go with the combo, it's cute, but it's not going to work, and this, that, and the other thing. I think we can agree that it's gonna be around in some capacity. Whether this continues on into the Pro Tour is one thing, but I think, and we talked about this, that the Pro Tour does dictate some like the meta going forward, but there's still kind of this lower SCG like meta game, and I think people will continue to play this deck even regardless of what happens at the Pro Tour. This just kind of feels like that deck that you could play this controlled shell and then just throw the Saheeli twin in there, or the Saheeli combo in there, or copycat, or whatever you want to call it, and you can feel comfortable about that. And that's really what I saw the whole weekend. It was a lot of these Jeskai Dynavolt tower lists that were pretty much around before the bannings, but they kind of fell off a little bit, and they basically just incorporated the Saheeli combo. And then there was these weird 4-color lists that looked actually pretty cool, but some of them were playing some really odd cards, and I was like, what is going on with this? But at least it looked fun.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Eldrazi. You know, when the Eldrazi came out, people were like, yeah, these cards are broken. How can I build a deck? And there were like 8 different Eldrazi decks. And that's what we got with Saheeli. We got the energy-focused ones. We got the I'm going to use Guardian as a value card ones. We got the straight, I'm just going to combo you as fast as I can. And then we got the I'm a control deck, and here's a 2-card finisher. So there were many Saheeli decks, even though they're all called, you know, Jeskai Saheeli or 4-color Saheeli. So post-Pro Tour, if this is a thing, the pro teams will figure out the best build, and we'll only have one, kind of like we ended up with Eldrazi. So it'll be pretty interesting to see if the pros deem this to be a real deck or not, and kind of just consolidate all of these builds into a single optimal build.
Right, that's actually a really good comparison, so I'm glad you brought that up. That is pretty much what we're seeing, right? And it looks cool now. I'm sure the pros, if they deem it worthy enough to play, I'm pretty sure that it's kind of hard to say that they won't, because it looks pretty good. But you're right, we will see kind of the version going forward. And to your point, Seth, I think the biggest loser was Aetherworks. I mean, I don't know. I only really saw one in the top 64. I'm sure others have come, were on camera here and there. I don't really think I saw one that I can remember. Maybe I missed a round or two. But it sort of seems like that was the most impacted one, because they just can't find that threat that's like Emrakul. I mean, how do you really replace Emrakul? You can't. So I guess, maybe they go Ulamog, or maybe the pros figure out, it's still a deck. But it looked like the blue-white lists were still there, but they morphed into like these Esper aggro lists, or these I saw like a blue-white spirits list. So that kind of seems like how that deck has evolved. And I want to see more of what people are doing with the aggressive end of of this metagame, because we see the black green counters list and the black green aggro list. That kind of seems like our mid range. Then you have the Saheeli, which is like the control combo. I want to see more of like these vehicles lists and how these Esper lists kind of still evolve, because they can still put out some really potent early turns and get under that combo really easily, as we've seen.
I think that the green-black decks are pretty aggressive, though. I mean, I guess maybe they're slightly more on the mid-range side of being aggressive, but they're definitely a lot more aggressive than they were before, when you were kind of playing towards Ishkana and Emrakul. Instead, you're playing like a lot of 2-drops. You got Rishkar, who was probably one of the big winners as far as new cards, along with Walking Ballista, and Winding Constrictor was very impressive in a lot of games I saw. So I think it's interesting to see that taking off, and maybe we'll see decks that are more aggressive than that, but I think that those decks are pretty aggressive in their own right. As far as Marvel, I think that deck's pretty dead. On the other hand, I am still super scared of Saheeli Twin or Copycat or whatever we're going to call that. I fully expect that when Pro Tour rolls around, that is the most popular deck and the most broken deck, and I still expect that that's going to be on the potential banning radar over the long term, because I mean, it was 40% of the top 64, or approximately 38 to 40%, and that's with people playing very scattered random builds, as Richard mentioned, and no one really knows the best way to abuse that. I think that once we come out of the Pro Tour, I would not be at all surprised to see that combo is the best or one of the best things to do in the format.
What do you guys think of actual gameplay? It looks a bit miserable to me, and I'm not sure if new players will like it, where starting on turn 4, if you tap out, you die. And a turn 4 Emrakul is good, but you're not technically dead, whereas turn 4 Copycat, you could just straight up be dead. And if they want to play it safe and do it all at once, turn 6 is the earliest they can do it. Turn 8 with Negate backup. It looked kind of miserable introducing a new generation to Splinter Twin. What do you think, like, casual players or new players will think of this? Do you think this will lower FNM attendance, or do you think people will be on board slinging combos and killing people, like, out of nowhere?
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, and I'm gonna bring up, because that actually came up with Cedric and Patrick, and they talked about that. And outside of the Saheeli twin, like, there was a lot of longer games, a lot of interaction, a lot of things were going on, and like you said, Seth, that I think you said it just recently or before we were starting, that the games kind of seem to be a little more drawn out now that there's so many things going on and you don't have to worry about, dying to Emrakul. Now really you're just kind of worrying about the Splinter Twin. And they talked about, it's like before, like with the Aether works, I don't really think you could pressure them enough. Like, you could kind of pressure them enough, but you still have to do the same thing with the Saheeli list, that you just have to really just play your cards, and if they have it, they have it, and they don't, they don't. Like, you can't just let them sit around and basically just build their hand to eventually have it. Like, you got to play Magic still.
Yeah, I think the comment, I think it was Patrick Sullivan, he said, you're going to lose 50% of your Magic games anyway, so you might as well just tap out and go for it, because if you don't, like, nothing, like, you're just losing slowly, right? That's exactly what the Twin player wants. I don't know, but it feels bad, no? Like, I know people always complain about getting turn 1 or turn 2 killed in Legacy and Vintage, or turn 3 killed in Modern. Is a turn 4 kill in Standard any better? Like, yeah, you play it and, 40% of the time they'll have it, they'll kill you, 60% of the time you'll go through. But I think players just generally don't like losing the game on the spot without any power. So I don't know how people will feel about this.
I think there's a huge divide in players. Like, I think if you're someone who plays Modern, Legacy, Vintage, any of those older formats, or maybe even have been playing just Standard for a while, then you're probably okay with it. Like, you're used to that kind of stuff happening, used to that style of gameplay. You might even enjoy that style of gameplay. On the other hand, if you're a new player, I imagine it being really frustrating and potentially being something that would keep you away from going to FNM and playing tournaments. But I think it really depends on how often that's happening. If those decks, I mean, we saw the top 64, I mentioned earlier, 38, 40%. If we're really having that percentage of decks that are running this combo, even if they're different color combinations and some are more controlling, some are more value, but if we're having 40% of decks playing this combo, I think that's a major issue. On the other hand, if this is a 8%, 10% deck and you're running into it once a week, every other week at FNM, then it's probably fine. So I think that's what it comes down to. But I think that Wizards, with the new second banning window post Pro Tour, are going to have a really quick hook with this combo. Like, if it does come out of the Pro Tour looking like this is one of the top decks, and the next tournament or two after the Pro Tour doesn't change that, I think that we'll see this just immediately get the first banning possible in that new banning window. For that reason, because new players are going to be hesitant of that style of gameplay and not want to go to FNM.
So do you think it's Emrakul? Like, for the first month, like, yeah, so cool, people figured out how to use this, like, big card, and even on Cast, they were talking about, yeah, I hope we see an Emrakul deck, and it didn't come up this weekend. And then next Pro Tour, it just takes over, and then everyone's sick of Emrakul. Do you think it's like that, where for the first month we're all enamored by Saheeli, and then 6 weeks later we're like, okay, this card's dumb. Let's get it out of here.
I think players will hate it quicker because it feels, as you mentioned, like it's kind of the difference between a removal spell and a counter spell. Like you said, with Emrakul, it feels like you're still playing Magic. Like, if you're new to Magic, you don't know how bad what just happened to you was when your opponent takes your turn with Emrakul. Like, you know that something not good is happening, but you don't see the full, like, enormity of that situation and realize that even if you live a couple more turns, you just lost the game. With this combo, you know that you just lost the game because the game literally ends and you have to pick up your card. So I think that it will be more frustrating for newer players than Emrakul was.
All right, serious question. Will you quit Magic Online if this is a tier 1 deck? Nothing is more miserable than trying to combo off infinitely on Magic Online by putting in 20 tokens.
Well, actually, I think Wizards changed this.
Oh.
Or they're in the process of implementing the change. I don't know if it started yet, but there's a new option that supports infinite combos on Magic Online that either, I think it's coming this downtime or the next downtime. So I think it'll be slightly less miserable.
So they knew this was going to be a thing. Because I never played Splinter Twin on Moto because of how miserable it is to actually combo off when you win. You're like, okay, just please scoop. Come on, scoop. And if they don't scoop, you got to sit there and click like 80 times to get the win.
They basically change it so now if you have a card like Felidar Sovereign, you can make it so it always, that card, any card with that name will always perform the same action. So you can not only set it so always yes, but any copy you have. So when your token copy enters the battlefield, it will still automatically say yes to the ability. So hopefully that makes combos a little bit less frustrating on Magic Online. I still don't think they'll be easy and fun to play, so hopefully they're heading in the right direction, though, by the sounds of it.
Nice. Okay, I took us totally off topic, so back to the actual winner of the tournament. Green-black decks actually took down the Classic in addition to the Open. What do you guys think of the innocuous Winding Constrictor? Black, green, 2/3. If one or more counters would be put on something, put an additional counter.
Love the card, and multiple times we saw that card over the weekend completely take over a game with Walking Ballista. Like when those two cards are on the battlefield, it almost just looks unfair because it is unfair. I mean, they just take over a game so quickly. And honestly, if we're talking about Saheeli, I mean, Walking Ballista is the answer to that list. And what's so great about it is it's completely on curve. Like you just go 1 mana, do something, 2 mana Ballista, 3 mana, Rishkar or whatever, or the Winding Constrictor, and you just go on from there. And Patrick Sullivan also brought this up during the SCG tour, and I think I'm going to lean with him. And as much as it would be a feel bad that people may not like the Saheeli Twin, or if the Pro Tour happens and it's like all over the place and people kind of get upset with it, I do think I think the optics would be a little bad to ban again after a Pro Tour, because they did mention that, like, I'm pretty sure they knew about the combo. Like, I think Sam openly said that they knew about it, that they felt that there's enough answers in the format, and I do think Walking Ballista is a very good answer to it.
You know what would pressure Saheeli pretty well? Smuggler's Copter.
Yes, it would.
Back to Winding Constrictor. So I have really mixed feelings about this card. I really like the card, and it's obviously really powerful, but it feels like the latest in a long line of cards that I don't like, because it's basically taking a popular spell or non-creature effect and stapling it to a really efficient body and making a push card like Spell Queller or some of the other creatures we've seen, because this is basically something we've seen like in Hardened Scales or reminiscent of part of Doubling Season and stuff like that. So I don't know if I like that the card exists, but it is clearly very powerful. Like, if there's one impression I had of the tournament this weekend, it's that Winding Constrictor is very, very strong.
It reminds me of Deathrite Shaman. Did it need the extra toughness? Could it just not be a 2/2 or a 2/1? Like, did it really need to be a 2/3? On top of its ability and being 2 mana? It seems just a little strong. Its ability is, like you said, a standalone card, a rare at that. And it's stapled on a 2 mana 2/3. So maybe they just made it a 2/2, but it kind of gave life to green-black. A lot of people thought green-black would no longer be a deck. It's playing kind of the mid-range game, and traditionally that sucks against combo decks. So if Saheeli is a big thing, but like Chaz said, Constrictor, Ballista, and just general pressure from Grimflayer and Virtus Gearhulk and stuff make the deck pretty competitive, and I actually think this will be the most popular deck going into the Pro Tour. I think because a lot of people have the cards already, and they're experienced with the deck, and it seems to handle Copycat pretty well. Like, Ballista is a really, really good card, and Virtus Gearhulk is a really good card, right? So you have all the tools available. So I actually think this will be the most popular deck going into the Pro Tour.
Yeah, it just has a lot of different. It's like not to directly compare, but it's like I feel like it can become the Jund of Standard, where it just has a good matchup overall. And I do feel like what you're saying is right, Richard, that the pros can kind of mold this in a way that it just generally has, all the tools it needs in the main deck to combat a lot of different things. And, the commentary this weekend was really great and attributes to how great Cedric and Patrick cover these tournaments. And even with new cards, that some of the commentary was amazing. And the one thing that did come up before this first tournament was the big weakness that the Saheeli twin combo does not have flash, and that can be exploited the most. Like, not to the fact that it's like bad because it doesn't have flash, because obviously it still works, but the big thing is it does not have flash. And I remember when Splinter Twin with Deceiver Exarch was in Standard, and it was a lot harder to combat that. Like, it really felt that deck just ran over Standard. There really wasn't anything that you could do to really stop it very well, because it's just you can't do anything when they're playing the combo at the end of your turn. And it's even worse because if they have it, it's starting on turn 3, not even turn 4, because they can flash in the Deceiver Exarch at the end of your turn, and then they just go off from there. The Saheeli twin, like, if you present a board state and you're going to play Saheeli, like, it's going to die immediately, because now you're posing this threat that they can't even play their Saheeli on turn 3. So how are they even going to be able to combo on turn 4 when Saheeli immediately dies to a bevy of different things? Like you said, Richard, like a Grimflayer, the Constrictor, just any of their creatures are going to take it down. So that's really where you have to attack this combo, is that you have to present a pretty aggressive board state even early on to just kind of get under that, so they can't really play their Saheeli on turn 3 into an open field.
So what are your thoughts on Heart of Kiran? It was in 35% of decks. So for perspective, Saheeli Rai was in 40% of the decks. Let's say Thraven Inspector, only 26%. So it seemed like everyone was running Heart of Kiran. But it wasn't that flashy. It didn't really make a big impact. It was the 9th most played card in the top 64, but it was pretty quiet. Like, is Crew 3 fair? Like, did you guys think it was an unfair card? Do you think this was a new Smuggler's Copter, or was this just kind of an efficient beater with downside?
An efficient beater with downside. It's never going to overtake the hype of Smuggler's Copter and how efficient that card was. But you're right. It quietly was a really good card at the tournament, and it even made the top 8. And it is a very good card, especially to pressure again these. I guess even the black green the black green list, because they have a pretty big weakness to flying, other than the Mind Rack Demon that the one list was playing. Not many. I think a few other of them were playing that too, but outside of Mind Rack Demon, you really can't do anything about this card other than try to hopefully fatal push it when they go to crew it. But the Crew 3 does make it pretty fair.
I actually came away with the impression that Aether Sphere Harvester was the more impressive of the two vehicles. Like, I know it wasn't as heavily played, but it dodges Fatal Push, it blocks Heart of Kiran, it has lifelink, which is pretty relevant. So I wouldn't be surprised if moving forward we see more decks use that as the vehicle of choice, because it does have that Crew 1 like Smuggler's Copter. I know you're paying 1 more mana up front, which can be a little problematic on curve, especially in the vehicles type decks, but I thought that looked better than Heart of Kiran when I saw it on camera at the tournament this weekend.
Yeah, it was very good. Very good. And again, like you said, Seth, I know it's like they packed even more onto the Constrictor, because, I mean, the deck revolves around Constrictor. Like, it's the engine of the list. And a lot of people, like, even it goes further that the energy clause on the bottom that may not always be very relevant is very relevant when it comes to Aether Sphere Harvester and even Glintsteve Siphoner, which at times it looked better than Dark Confidant. I mean, truly, when you could play it and you automatically get the energy to use its ability because you have a Constrictor. That's another card that I thought looked a lot better than I initially thought, especially when you're playing with the Whiny Constrictor. So it's really just the engine that makes everything go.
Yeah, I thought it was the best card in the deck. I mean, maybe Walking Ballista because of how it fights the combo, but if you watch the games play out, there was a huge difference in the green-black decks when they had a Windy Constrictor and when they did not. Like that, it really is the card that pushes the deck over the top, and essentially every other creature, and even Nissa the Planeswalker in the deck, interacts with that card in a really positive way. So I think we'll definitely see more of it. On the other hand, I got a question for you guys. What we did not see at this tournament was any of the stuff that seemed potentially broken. We didn't see, other than the Saheeli Rai combo, we didn't see Paradox Engine. We didn't see the Expertise Cycle pretty much at all. Any of the other combos that we were talking about. So do you think that we will see those things at the Pro Tour? Is this just people playing pretty obvious stuff, slotting some new cards into their old decks for the first week, and we're going to see a big change with all these potentially powerful combo-y broken cards at the Pro Tour, or are those things just not good enough, do you think, for Standard?
I'm actually going to answer your question with your own findings on this one, because you wrote an article back in October about if week one decks really impact the Pro Tour, and I do think we'll see some of this stuff, but I think you're right on this one. Like, people are mostly playing it safe. They're playing just cards that are generally good on their own, but I mean, sometimes you have a deck like with the Constrictor where they're just better because of Constrictor, but normally what we saw was, you're exactly right. Like, we just saw all the good stuff that doesn't really need a lot of finesse to be good. Whether pros are trying to build like an Aether Flux Reservoir, is that what that card's called? The Reservoir?
Yeah, that's one.
Pay
yep.
50.
Aether Flux. Yeah, like, I don't know if they're going to be going that like off the hinges about it, but I think we could see something potentially, because I mean, LSV. I mean, the last time, they're the ones that really made that Cryptolith right. This is going back to Shadows over Innistrad Pro Tour. That Cryptolith right list, and like, it was basically a huge value list. So maybe they could do something with the Paradox Engine, because that seems like it could be real. But for now, I think we're just going to see basically what we see is that these decks are just good, and they're just playing good cards, and maybe we'll see some extra brewing at the Pro Tour. But I don't even know if they're going to go that far, because pros kind of like to play it safe too, and they just like just good lists. They don't want to like play these crazy lists. Who knows? Maybe we'll see a Dragonstorm combo again, because Patrick Chapin definitely played a Dragonstorm at once, so maybe he'll do something weird.
Yeah, I think generally week one results, they're pretty standard decks. They're the decks that you find on Reddit. They're the decks that if you sat down and had to use your regular amateur mind to come up with, that's what you come up with. And sometimes those happen to be the best decks, and the pros just refine it slightly. But other times, the pros like just come up with totally crazy stuff that's not anywhere close to what you were thinking. So I don't know. I don't think this is our metagame. I'm pretty sure we'll see different stuff. I mean, at the very least, we'll see a refined Saheeli list if that's the real deck. But I don't think, Mardu Vehicles, Green Black Aggro, and stuff like that, even those decks have a lot of variation right now. So I think what we see at the Pro Tour will be vastly different. And I wouldn't be surprised if a couple new archetypes showed up. Expertise Cycle, I'm still convinced they're broken. And if they turn out to be balanced, then apparently I know nothing about Magic and I have to reevaluate Magic. But I think we'll see something. I think either more combos, or maybe aggro lists, control lists, or refined copycat, refined green-black rock lists.
Yeah. And again, I think we can end on what your conclusion was from that article set, that recently it's been a little bit better, that you do kind of see some of the foundation of what we will, what we're going to look at going forward after the Pro Tour, or during the Pro Tour and after that, like early on that humans list was doing really well, to use an example from your article. And then we saw that like at the Pro Tour. So I think it's getting better in the sense that as we go along, that just some of those lists are just good enough, like you said, Richard, that they're just good enough, and that the pros just refine those. But I do think there's still a lot of room to innovate here.
I really hope there's the draft deck, like the Eldrazi, the blue-red Eldrazi deck, because this standard's kind of expensive right now. But I don't know. Winding Constrictor was a draft all-star, so maybe we're already there. But
Hey, I do think the Eldrazi can still be a thing. I don't know what you would play turn 1, but the Metallic Mimic into the Sky Spawner seems pretty good.
Hey,
I don't know. Maybe something's
Tezzeret.
there. Who knows?
Speaking of bad cards,
No Tezzeret at all.
No Tezzeret. No Planeswalker intro deck Planeswalkers.
Like,
we saw a couple of Johnnies, but no Tezzeret at all. The schemer was not scheming.
And what happened to all those Colossus lists?
They started off strong.
Starts and ends with him.
Where'd they go, Seth? You said they were all over the place. It's like what I heard for the first few hours is, oh my god, the Colossus lists are everywhere. They're like taking over the entire SEG, like wherever they were holding it. The convention is just everywhere. What? I don't see any in the top 64 even.
Well, people played them because they were on camera the first few rounds, but apparently they were not quite good enough, at least for the first week. So, we'll see. I guess Joe Lissette said that he thinks the deck has potential to be good. He's one of the people that played it. Has potential to be good, but it's not quite there yet, and it needs some more work as far as fine-tuning it. So we'll see. That could be something that pops up in future weeks, I think, still.
Wasn't it him? I don't know if he was part of that group that said something similar to Last Standard, and they were playing they were trying to do this like the thing in the ice list, and they completely went off on some other deck with like the goggles. So I don't know if that's like, if it's not there yet means we're never going to play this again. That could legitimately be his underhanded tone there, is that, well, it's not here, so yeah, we're never going to play it again. I don't know, but not even in the top 64. I mean, come on.
Well, there wasn't much room amid all the Saheeli combo decks for for anything else.
Wasn't the Colossus kind of like a control or a combo deck?
I mean, essentially, your combo is playing huge creatures, but
I guess when you're playing 10/10s and they're playing a million 1/4s.
Well, yes, that's one of the a million duck size Eldrazi beat one Eldrazi size duck, or whatever that Reddit question is.
Yes. Yes.
But I think wants Infinite Philidare Guardians over one Metalwork Colossus. I think is the more story.
I think so too. And clearly from the results, it looks that way. All right, so I think we're all pretty optimistic going forward, but I could see both of your tunes changing really quickly. I was just hearing you both talk, and it's like, are we done with Saheeli combo yet? Can we move on and ban it?
Hey, I'm fine with games ending fast. If I'm going to lose, I might as well lose in 2 minutes as opposed to 35 minutes.
Now you've really witnessed that firsthand playing the Pokemon TCG.
No, man, it takes a long time for that one turn to go off.
They condense all their shuffling and everything that you would do in the span of an entire game into one turn. Mm-hmm. It's like they had you in mind, Richard.
Mm-hmm. Can't afford to play Vintage. Play Pokemon TCG.
You're drawing like 50 cards and killing someone. Yeah. Real quick anecdote on there was a IQ, a modern IQ with looks like Cheerios actually happened. Seth, we talked about this before. All three of us, that SRAM maybe could make the Cheerios list a little more consistent, and it seems like someone's trying.
Yeah, I mean, that deck is... I said this before when we were talking about it, but the deck is absurd if you have a Pure Steel Paladin on turn 2, and when you have 8 Pure Steel Paladins instead of 4 Pure Steel Paladins, your odds of having one on turn 2 goes up significantly. So I think it was Zach Elsick, I think, that played it, who is of Lantern Control fame, is the original creator of that deck, and he performed well at IQ. I think he was in first place heading into the top 8 and finished 5th, and according to his Twitter, was killing people on turn 2 really regularly. If you have your Pure Steel Paladin or SRAM on turn 2, it's pretty easy to just win the game on the spot and storm off with Grape Shot. So I'm definitely excited to try it out. Out of all the new decks we've seen for Modern, post-banning, and with the new set release, this is the one I'm really excited to try out once the cards hit Magic Online.
Yeah, so that was an SCG Modern IQ, Denton, and you're right, it was Zach Elsick. Got 5th place with the deck. So we'll see if it continues. I know there's been a lot of hype already. Card prices have been increasing because of it. So we'll see if it's the real thing going forward. All right. Does that leave us to fish mail?
Yep, let's go to Fishmail. So if you have questions for us to answer, tweet at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll answer your questions on air. So first question from at GInnate87. I've been putting together Eldrazi-tron, and what would be a good substitute for Chalice of the Void?
All right, so most of the Eldrazi Tron decks do play Chalice of the Void, 4 of in the main deck. However, there are some builds that have had success without it, and the most common substitution is to play the deck relatively the same, but just slot in 4 expedition maps, and that gives you more likelihood of putting together Tron, but less kind of disruption for the opponent. So you play more like a real Tron deck in the sense that your goal is to put together Tron and play big things really quickly. So that's probably where I'd start if you don't have Chalices.
All right, next question from at Epic Pug. If Satan runs F&M, what's the format? What deck is he playing?
Maraudon Standard, and he's playing Affinity.
It's got to be Masks Limited, I think. And I don't know what he drafts, but God, that format is bad.
You know what was even worse than Masks Limited is Masks Standard, where everyone was just playing Win Civi.
Yeah, he was playing Rebels, I bet, if he's playing Masks Standard.
Oh my God. That was horrible.
I don't actually have a format I hate. So apparently I just love Magic, so I just pass. Or apparently I wasn't around during the heyday of bad standards. Because, I can't think of a bad one.
And it's actually funny coming from me because I love playing Affinity, but I gotta tell you, that standard was pretty miserable. I mean, I can't even deny the fact that it was miserable.
I was kind of hoping one of us would say Frontier just to see what the comments would be like.
But there was a time when you had Skull Clamp and Disciple of the Vault and all this stuff going on. It was really nuts.
Sounds like an awesome format. What are
yeah, that sounds like
awesome if you're playing Affinity, but you were playing like 90% mirror matches.
All right, next question from Frank Buda Cavill. Is a lack of control deck the problem with Standard? I feel like strong control decks make people brew.
Well, I think that control might be on the rise. Like, the biggest problem with control decks before is it's hard to play the long game when you have Emrakul coming down and just ending the game on the spot. So without Emrakul, and to a lesser extent Smuggler's Copter to pressure Planeswalkers and stuff, I think that we might be getting to a time when control isn't like the best deck, but it's definitely playable. We saw some Jace Unraveler of Secrets actually look really good on camera, so I'm hopeful that maybe this question isn't too relevant because control is actually going to be playable in our current standard.
Yeah, I actually think it's the exact opposite, and I'm like 99% positive Frank here is a control player, because the control decks are really strong. I think people just give up and stop brewing. Like, what is the point of playing anything when it just gets counterspelled and you don't make any progress? So, to me, when control's a thing, your innovation comes in playing, the fourth Sphinx's Revelation over the third one or whatever. So I actually think it's the opposite. I think that when you have really strong control decks, people actually stop brewing, and people just stop playing Magic when that happens.
Yeah, I mean, Jim Davis got to a 15th place finish with blue-black control. And, I mean, over the course of the tournament, he did play the Saheeli combo decks, and what's a good way to stop Saheeli combo twin is just counter everything, so they can't even combo. So, and then just start flat, and then just start playing Torrential Gearhulk after Torrential Gearhulk after Torrential Gearhulk, and they die. So, I think some control lists are on the horizon, especially at Pro Tour. I think this is a blueprint to something. I don't know if we're going to see something different, but I do think we will see control come back, because when you have combo, you pretty much have to have control because that's a good way to stop it. And I think we're going to have a pretty good blend of things going on.
All right, next question from @Palazzo47. What is the saltiest loss you've ever had?
So I think I've told this story before, but when I first started playing, I was super casual, and this new player joined our play group and brought along with him a Orm's Chant Isochron Scepter deck that made it so essentially you just never can do anything ever. And after getting a Scepter locked for like an entire game, and I'm playing like this janky casual, like 8-drop artifacts from the original Mirrodin block deck. I was pretty mad in that one. I don't think I literally flipped the table, but I definitely remember having to go like walk around outside and like take a deep breath and calm myself down because I was so frustrated. So it was like when I very first started playing.
I really can't remember, honestly. I'm sorry.
What?
I cannot.
Hiding the salt?
No, I don't think I've really ever got that salty. I mean, I'm pretty competitive, so like, I don't like to lose, but I don't think I've really ever gotten that salty about it.
Yeah, I typically don't get salty over individual games, but I think my saltiest Magic experience was GP Vegas. I missed day 2 on the last round, so I think it's like round 11 or something. So I was X2, and I had my last loss in the last round, invalidating like my 12 hours of Magic that day. And my friends scrubbed out at like round 3. So, they were off partying in Vegas, and I was there slogging away for an additional 10 hours, and then I lost in the last round, missed day 2, totally wasted the entire day, and I was pretty salty after that. Not because of what happened in the game, but just, it was like a terrible waste of time when you lose at the very last round of day 1.
Yeah, that is pretty awful.
That's why I've never played GP ever again. I'm just gonna go and visit Artist Alley and check
and
things
side
out.
events.
Yep.
Okay.
Next question from, this is hard, NRVNQ Restray. Have any of you ever tried Magic Duels on Steam? Thoughts on its weird rarity restricted version of Standard? Who has played Magic Duels recently?
I have not played Magic Duels recently. I think I played it like one time a while ago, and it was all right. I mean, I didn't really play it for that long.
I'm kind of in the same boat as Chaz. I have played it before, but not recently. It just didn't. As someone who likes to brew, having such a limited card pool just didn't really keep my interest.
Yeah, and it's not even that. It's like maybe it's just the way Magic Duels is set up. It's like I feel like I'm playing like fake Magic. Like that, not like fake in the sense that like you're not playing Magic, but non-meaningful Magic. So it's like I'd rather just go like to the store and like just go play.
Yeah, I played it. I don't know, a couple of years ago when it first came out. I think that was when Scavenging Ooze was the promo. But
yep, you're right.
I didn't really like it because it was like pretty slow. Like the way the game turns out, like there's a lot of just waiting and weird animations. But B, like Seth said, the card pool is different. And it's just weird playing with the same cards, but not really. So I didn't like that part of it. I really wish the card pool was at parity.
And it's also kind of weird when you're unlocking like mythics and rares that you would never play in real Magic.
As far as, I think the other part of the question was about the rarity restrictions, which I think is something like you can only play 1 of a mythic, 2 of each rare in the same deck, something like that, maybe 3 uncommons and 4 commons. So it restricts the number of higher rarity cards you can play. And I don't like that idea as being a rule for Magic in general, mostly because of just the complexity it adds to the game. Like being able to say, you can only play 4 of 1 cards, nice and easy. But when you have cards that like change rarities, we've had cards that are mythic 1 core set and rare a couple of core sets later. It just creates all kinds of confusion for people, especially new players that are trying to build just a legal deck that they can play at their FNM.
Yeah, plus it's very hard to tell if your opponent has a legal deck. Because you got to start counting the rares and mythics and stuff like that. Whereas like a game like Hearthstone, it's digital, so it's it's just built in, so you don't have to worry about someone running 2 legendaries of the same legendary.
Although I always wondered how Magic would look if there was a restriction like that. It would be interesting, to say the least, because on the other end of the on the other end of the literally it would be like the time where you could only play Stoneforge Mystic if you are playing the event deck, like straight up. You could play Stoneforge Mystic, which I always thought was, to this day, was really funny. But I always thought was like, how would that be? Because it would certainly make mythics appear a lot more mythic in that sense. And there's always that counter argument. Like I don't think this will ever happen, and I'm just kind of just theorizing here. But I mean, there is that argument that's like, with all these mythics and rares, and you get to jam pack like 4 of them all into your deck. Like after a while, like everything just becomes like homogenized, and like why would you ever play anything other than these 4 mythics, like a Verder's Gearhulk? I'm just using an example. Like there's no other card that's better than it. Although if you had to make the choice, like, do you play Verder's Gearhulk? Do you play a Nissa? Do you play this? Like, I don't know. It would be interesting.
Singleton standard could kind of solve the same thing, but be easier to conceptualize.
Right.
All right, next question from @Yona77. Looking to buy more Jund pieces at GP Pittsburgh, Catacombs or Bobs? Any tips for buying at a GP?
Well, you're the resident Jund player. I would assume you'd need Catacombs over Bobs, right?
No, Bobs. Definitely Bobs.
Really?
I mean, you can get away without playing Catacombs. You can play Wooded Foothills or whatever, and you might lose 1% of your matches because of it. Whereas, well, I guess if you're planning on putting Bobs in your deck, then definitely get Bobs. But if you're going to cut Bob for like Grimflay or something, then don't buy Bobs. So if Bob is definitely going in your deck, I would put Bobs. You win much more percentage of your games with a Bob than a Verdant Catacombs.
As I thought about it, as it's coming out of my mouth, you're right. Like, you could substitute a Wooded Foothills over Catacombs better than you could probably substitute like a Pain Seer over a Dark Confidant.
What, the Siphoner, the Glint Sleeve Siphoner?
I think that card's pretty good. I don't know, man. I think that card's pretty good.
I mean, if you needed to sub Bob, I would put Painful Truths or Night's Whisper or something like that, but I'd rather just put Bobs in the deck.
I'll go with Richard's advice as far as the actual card choices. I just wanted to point out, though, the GP in Pittsburgh is February 11th or something, which is like right around, maybe just before Modern Masters 2017 spoilers. So with all of your Modern purchases right now, just keep that in mind. With a card like Dark Confidant, it's definitely a possibility that we see it get spoiled for Modern Masters 2017. How likely that is up for debate, but just keep that in mind with your Modern purchasing until we see the set list for Modern Masters 2017, which should be out like the end of February, I think.
There's no way Bob sees a third reprinting, is there? He's probably not a favor. He's not even that expensive. He's not that popular.
I don't think Bob makes the cut this time.
It's still pretty expensive, right? Isn't it still like $40+? Dark Confidant.
Yeah, I think it's like $35.
$37.95. So I don't know. I think it's still possible. One thing we could see is Wizards print cards like that at Mythic for a couple sets in a row, and then print them as rare at a future Modern Masters, and just kind of cash out the rest of their equity. So
true.
Then my Bobs will become 5 cents afterwards. Why? Who needs more
Literally
Bobs?
like $15 Bob.
All right, next question from @DeadBear. Saffron Olive should do commentary in every Magic YouTube video. Lol, his crazy voice inflections. So when will you be on the Pro Tour, kicking out LSV, doing commentary stuff?
I do not expect to ever get invited to that. I think while mispronouncing things can work for a YouTube channel, I'm not sure Wizards would want that on official Pro Tour coverage.
Hey, if it brings in the views, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Maybe I'll apply if there's ever a one of those random like Wizards job postings that come across across Twitter for Pro Tour commentary. Maybe I'll apply for it.
Next question from @TastySnackies. If you were forced to play with only one block's worth of card forever, which block would you choose?
Oh, come on. This is an easy one. I've been saying the same one. It's Ravnica.
I get all nostalgic.
I mean, it was the first block you picked up a Magic card. So.
Wait, have any of you guys actually played block Instructed when it was a thing?
Yeah, the last time I played block was the Avacyn Restored, like the silver. Oh God, what was that card?
Something silver, something Paladin.
No, yeah, it was a 5-mana 4/4 with Soul Bond. Something Wolfear Silverheart. Got it. Yes.
Oh, Wolfear Silverheart.
Yeah,
that was the green one.
Yep, it sure was. I remember that card was like $7-8 just because it was in block.
Block used to be an actual like Pro Tour format, and I'm super thankful I got rid of it because I hated the Block Pro Tour. It always felt so underpowered. I did play Block a little bit just because it was on Magic Online. If I really had to pick one block, oh geez, I don't even know. I had a lot of fun playing the Lingering Souls Sorin Intangible Virtue deck before it got banned. So maybe
really?
that format, yeah.
Oh, that was Avicen's Restored, wasn't it? That whole block.
I think it was like the big deck at first, and then it got banned, and then probably Wolfir Silverheart was a thing after that.
You know what's funny is if you still go on the BNR, like you still see the block cards that are banned. It's like why even list these anymore? Does anyone legitimately play block? Come on.
And it goes all the way back, like Lin Civi.
It does. It does.
Are people really still playing Mass Block Constructed?
Find me one store that is playing Masks Block Constructed, and I want to go to that store.
I think you guys stole my answer, but I had a different answer for a different reason. So Innistrad Block, but because of Limited, we weren't stipulated to Constructed or Limited. So apparently Block Constructed is where it's pretty good with Lingering Souls, but Limited is also really good. So I think that set had a good mixture of Limited and Constructed playable cards. So Innistrad all around. Apparently, if we're stuck on a desert island, we will bring some boxes of Innistrad with us.
Yeah, that's a good choice. I gotta say, man, Innistrad was the first Innistrad block was really, really good. I mean, Avicen's Restored was a little weird, but the Limited was completely horrible. But overall, the block was really good. Other than that, the only block I really could ever be stuck with forever is the first Ravnica block. That block was awesome.
All right, so that is all of our fish mail for this week.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, for sending those in. Those were some really awesome questions. And every week they are. They're great. They're great to talk about. Keep them up, and we will continue to answer them. Gentlemen, anything else, last-minute thoughts, anything out the door?
So we have one more weekend of tournaments, is that right? And then the next weekend is Pro Tour?
Yes.
Dublin?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, Dublin. We have one more weekend of SCG, and then the following weekend is Pro Tour. You're correct.
And then right after the Pro Tour is the Super Bowl? Literally like 2 hours?
Well, they actually line up. So I'm assuming...
I swear, Wizards is so bad at scheduling. So bad.
They did this last year, and I remember us talking about this last year. We were like, why did you do it like this? And hopefully they never do it again. Well, they lightning strikes twice on this one.
And they publish the Super Bowl dates like years in advance. So there's really not any good excuse. Like Wizards could have easily like looked that up.
We need to get Morrow with Roger Goodell in a room or something. Be like, excuse me, sir, you need to move the Super Bowl. It's Pro Tour Aether Revolt. Yeah, thank you.
Imagine.
We're going to have like 15,000 people watching our Twitch channel. We're gonna. Do you really want to go up against that, NFL? Oh my god!
Actually, surprisingly, there was a lot of people watching SCG.
I
didn't watch it, but I was looking at the numbers, and Magic players and NFL watchers don't intersect apparently because there was a lot of people watching Star City games despite the championship games going on.
Like, sir, Mr. Goodell, I think people would rather be listening to Rashad than Chris Collinsworth that day. No beef with Rashad. I had to make that joke. I'm sorry.
It just seems so easy to move it a weekend. Like, what's the cost of moving it up by a weekend or back by a weekend to avoid? Because Super Bowl is pretty big in the U.S. Like, that's a national holiday, essentially. Even people that don't care about football watch the Super Bowl. My grandmother watches the Super Bowl. Like, if you're trying to make the Pro Tour a big, like, thing, it seems like you're working against that goal by having it at the same time as the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, you're already, like, it's in Dublin, so the scheduling, like, the viewing time for most, North America is already pretty bad. Now that you're just scheduling it on the same day, like, I don't. You're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot on that one. I don't know, but I mean they did it twice in a row now, so I don't know if it might just continue to be a trend.
Well, I guess we'll have to see. It'll be interesting to look at the viewership numbers and kind of compare it to another Pro Tour. Maybe it just really doesn't matter, and there's not much of an overlap.
Maybe.
Yeah, I mean the 15,000 people compared to what's the numbers on the Super Bowl? Like how many millions when you account for TV?
I think last year's Super Bowl, which was New England, Seattle, right? I think had like broken the Nielsen records or whatever. It was like millions of people or something.
Yeah, tens of millions. I don't know the exact number, but it's definitely tens of millions, maybe 40, 50 million people. Like, it's a pretty massive number.
Yeah. And that was like record breaking.
Well, one day Pro Tour will be the Super Bowl. One day. I mean, if we could just fill 60,000. 60,000 is a stadium. Yeah. Just get a stadium's worth watching Twitch. It's possible. Yeah, I've seen those numbers on Twitch before.
Listen, I think they would be happy with like getting the viewership like on a random Wednesday of a large streamer of like League of Legends or Hearthstone like numbers, which could easily be like 50, 60,000 on like a random Tuesday.
I'm surprised Wizards hasn't tried this. We're going off a total tangent, but just get one of those big League streamers or Hearthstone streamers. Just throw a boatload of cash in their face and make them like play Aether Revolt pre-release.
Play our game.
Yeah, just make them play Aether Revolt pre-release.
Play it on stream.
It hasn't happened.
They kind of are doing that with YouTube. People that I never heard of that have big like gaming related followings have been getting like paid sponsorship promo videos from Wizards where they talk about like spoil a card or something. So
but they need to go ahead, finish.
Oh, so I wouldn't be surprised if they got there with Twitch eventually, if that's not part of the plan.
I've solved it. Get Tom Brady to stream Aether Revolt before the Super Bowl. We've done it.
Hey, Card Kingdom was onto something with the two, Seattle Seahawk players. Maybe they got to start doing something like that, but only like Wizards needs to start doing that, not just Card Kingdom.
Like after Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl and they ask him where he's going to go, he says, "I'm going to go play Magic the Gathering."
I'm heading to my local gaming store for the free promo.
Where you could find me, Tom Brady, and playing Magic the Gathering at Aether Revolt. And like he's reading from a card.
Butchering the names.
Where they have just recently banned Emrakul? What? So go out and enjoy Standard. All right, I think that about wraps it up for this episode. So we will do this again next week. So everyone enjoy. We will get another round of Aether Revolt Standard. So come hear our thoughts a week from now. So take care, everyone. This is the MTG Goldfish Crew signing out.